If you recognize this meme of Buzz Lightyear and Woody of paradoxes everywhere. And I'm not going to go through and directly read every slide because I hate that. But for here, we have these points that we put so much focus on, and that these are opportunities. And I had to add scotch and beer to the bourbon to savor things as a craft beer lover. Nice, heavy Belgian quad is one of my favorite things. And to, accept these contradictions. And another point that I really take an interest in, I guess you could say, is, about this thing of multiple realities and how people are coming in with their own set of realities. So to start out, we have a scene from Star Trek, and this is The Next Generation. I could do a whole presentation just on Star Trek. There's so much in it. But this brings up issues of sentience and artificial intelligence, and there's a scientist who wants to take Data, who is the android, and disassemble him and to try to duplicate the android. And there becomes an issue of, is the android just property, or is it a sentient being that can make his own decisions? So they come up with the first officer, Riker, gets hit with a paradox of having to take the opposite viewpoint of what he actually believes in what's essentially a hearing to determine whether or not Data can make this decision of whether, to refuse being taken apart, basically. So this is where Riker is forced to take the opposite perspective of what he actually believes.
I have completed my research based on the acts of Cumberland passed in the early 21st century. Data is the property of Starfleet. He cannot resign, and he cannot refuse to cooperate with Commander Maddox.
What if I challenge this ruling?
Then I shall be required to hold a hearing.
Then I so challenge. Convene your hearing.
Captain, that would be exceedingly difficult. This is a new base. I have no staff.
But surely, Captain, you have regulations to take care of such an eventuality.
There are. I can use serving officers as legal counsel. You, as the senior officer, would defend.
Very good.
And the unenviable task of prosecuting this case would fall on you, Commander, as the next most senior officer of the defendant's ship.
I can't. I won't. Data's my comrade. We have served together. I not only respect him, I consider him my friend.
When people of good conscience have an honest dispute, we must still sometimes resort to this kind of adversarial system.
You just want me to prove that Data is a mere machine. I can't do that because I don't believe it. I happen to know better, so I am neither qualified nor willing. I'm going to have to find someone else.
Then I will rule summarily based on my findings. Data is a toaster. Have him report immediately to Commander Maddox for experimental refit.
I see. I have no choice but to agree.
Good. And I expect you to do your duty in that courtroom. If I find for 1 minute that you are not doing your best, I will end this then and there.
You don't have to remind us of our duty. You just remember yours.
I have never forgotten it. Not then, and certainly not now.
So there's Riker forced into that role of the opposite perspective. So later on in the show, Riker embraces this paradox and embraces it a little too well. And you can see, hear his compelling case of the opposite of what he actually believes.
Proceed, Commander.
I'm sorry. The commander is a physical representation of a dream, an idea conceived of by the mind of a man. Its purpose, to serve human needs and interests. It's a collection of neural nets and heuristic algorithms. Its responses dictated by an elaborate software written by a man. Its hardware built by a man. And now a man will shut it off. Pinocchio is broken. Its strings have been cut.
I request a recess.
Granted.
So that was Riker embracing that paradox a little too well, and which also brings up, the paradox of his responsibilities conflicting with his actual feelings, or what he feels is right. So while watching Family Ties, yes, again, this reflects that I'm old, but I thought about the paradox of mutually assured destruction. That was a big thing, through the 70s and the early 80s, that there was not a conflict, or I should say a war, physical conflict, kind of, because both sides knew that if one side launched the attack, both sides would be eliminated. And you can look at examples that this can relate to also, of like sunk costs, and at what point do you change your strategy, and how do you change your strategy without leaving yourself vulnerable? So here's a little realization of mutually assured destruction.
Kids don't realize the importance of this issue. No, we're not talking about repainting the fire hydrants. We're talking about the future of mankind.
The question you kids should be asking is why we continue to make hydrogen bombs when we already have enough to kill the Russians 40 times over.
Don't be so melodramatic, Mom. From the beginning of time, there's been weapons, and there's always been a fringe element who've overreacted. But I'm sure that even in the early days, there were bleeding heart cavemen running around with signs that said, "Make love, not clubs."
Alex, are you actually in favor of nuclear weapons?
I'm in favor of us having them, not using them.
Why do we have them if we're not going to use them?
That's a dumb question, Jennifer. It's called a deterrent force.
Do both sides have a detergent force?
Deterrent force, Jennifer. It means that the more weapons both sides have, the less chance that either side will have to use them.
Why can't both sides just have no bombs?
It's too late. We already paid for them.
So they already paid for them. There's their sunk costs, which also, led me into the movie Wargames, and that plays a lot on the mutually assured destruction and things kind of spiraling out of control, and the paradox of winning by not playing, and that's the mutually assured destruction, where the war could be best prevented if neither side could be expected to survive. And this is where we realize that.
guys out of the mountain. They're dead and trying to break through on satellites.
Okay, keep trying.
What's it doing?
It's learning.
Greetings, Professor Falcon.
Hello. Joshua?
Strange game. The only winning move is not to play.
So, you think of, I have on my notes jotted down as the example of Microsoft exited the smartphone market because they knew they couldn't win it. So instead, they looked to future opportunities and, looked for what would the next big thing be. They shifted their strategy and they won by not playing in the smartphone market. To one particular episode of Avatar, which is a show my son got me turned on to, and it's a great show. 3 seasons and short 20-minute episodes. Great show, very enjoyable. But in this one particular episode, Aang, the Airbender, the main character, has to mediate between 2 tribes and kind of keep them working together. Although the 2 tribes have been fighting for almost 100 years. And through this, they become trapped in a canyon where they have to work together to get out, and Aang has to mediate this. So as we go through this, we find that the conflicts of the 2 tribes comes down to a myth. And it's 2 different versions of the same story, and that is, even though there are 2 different versions of the same story, they're both true to each tribe.
The patriarch of our tribe, Jin Wei, was an earthbender warrior who was assigned an important duty, transporting our sacred orb from the Great Eastern Gate to the Great Western Gate. Taking the orb from the east to the west represents the sun's rising and setting. It was our tribe's ancient redemption ritual. But as he approached the gate, Jin Wei was attacked by one of the Zhang, a vermin named Wei Jin, who looked at the orb with envy. That coward Wei Jin knocked Jin Wei to the ground and stole our sacred orb. Our people have never forgotten. You can never trust a Zhang.
So that's the rooting of one side, and here we see the same story.
Our forefather, Wei Jin, was leaving the western gate
on
of
the
our
other
village
side
when he saw a figure in the distance. It was a man of the Ganjin tribe. Jin Wei collapsed on the ground. Noble Wei Jin stopped to help him. Jin Wei was transporting a sacred orb, a very powerful relic used in his tribe's redemption ritual. Wei Jin tried to tend to the man's wounds, but Jin Wei insisted the orb was more important and asked him to take it back to his tribe. Kind Wei Jin promised to send help for the man as soon as he could. But as Wei Jin crossed the border to return the orb into Ganjin territory, he was arrested. Instead of thanking him for his kind and selfless deed, they sentenced him to 20 long years in prison.
So there we have the two stories. So the Avatar brings them together by showing that both of their realities can actually be true at the same time.
Wait a second. Jin Wei? Wei Jin? I know those guys.
Yes, yes, we're all aware of the story.
No, I mean, I really knew them. I might not look it, but I'm 112 years old. I was there 100 years ago on the day you're talking about. There seems to be a lot of confusion about what happened. First of all, Jin Wei and Wei Jin weren't enemies. They were brothers. Twins, in fact. And they were 8. And most importantly, they were just playing a game. The sacred orb from the legend? That was the ball. And the eastern and western gates were the goalposts. Jin Wei had the ball and was running toward the goal when he fell and fumbled it. Wei Jin didn't steal the ball. He picked it up and started running it back toward the other goal. But he stepped out of bounds. So the official put him in the penalty box. Not for 20 long years, but for 2 short minutes. There was no stealing and no putting anyone in prison. Just a game.
You're saying the sacred orb was actually a sacred ball?
Nope, just a regular ball.
What about our tribe's redemption ritual?
That's what the game was called, redemption. As soon as someone got the ball from one goal to the other, everyone would yell, redemption! Don't get me wrong, Wei Jin was kind of a slob, and Jin Wei was a little stuffy. That much is true. But they respected each other's differences enough to share the same playing field.
I suppose it's time we forget the past.
And look to the future.
And however, there's a little twist when we find out that Aang's story was a lie. But then it raises the question, does it matter? That now his story is now the reality for both tribes.
That's some luck you knew Jin Wei and Wei Jin.
You could call it luck. Or you could call it lying.
What?
I made the whole thing up.
You did not. That is so wrong.
Now where's that custard tart?
So in this episode, we have things like organizational conflict, working towards a common goal, people coming into the organization from their own realities. And one of the things watching it again for this that I really found interesting was there are times where each tribe tries to express how the other tribe sees things. So they're trying to look in the other perspectives, but they still do it within their own frame. So they still are bound by their own biases and preconceptions on those perceptions. And stories and myths are components of culture, and these are the things that bind the organization together. And another Star Trek one. I kept it to 2. This is it. But in the Rathacon, there is the moment of the Kobayashi Maru as a test. And it's a paradox because it can't be won. It's designed so that it can't be won. And it's designed so that the person taking the test realizes other things like handling death.
Oh, Mr. Savick, are you going to stay with the sinking ship?
Permission to speak candidly, sir.
Granted.
I don't believe this was a fair test of my command abilities.
And why not?
Because there was no way to win.
A no-win situation is a possibility every commander may face. Has that never occurred to you?
No, sir. It is not.
How we deal with death is at least as important as how we deal with life, wouldn't you say?
As I indicated, Admiral, that thought had not occurred to me.
Well, now you have something new to think about. Carry on.
However, Captain Kirk is the only person who has ever beaten it. Before his 3rd attempt, he thought outside of the frame, and he introduced factors that were not previously defined.
Sir, may I ask you a question?
What's on your mind, Lieutenant?
The Kobayashi Maru, sir.
Are you asking me if we're playing out that scenario now?
On the test, sir. Will you tell me what you did? I would really like to know.
Lieutenant, you are looking at the only Starfleet cadet who ever beat the no-win scenario.
How?
I reprogrammed the simulation so it was possible to rescue the ship.
What?
He cheated. I changed the conditions of the test. Got a commendation for original thinking. I don't like to lose.
Then you never faced that situation. Faced death.
I don't believe in the no-win scenario. Kirk to Spock. It's 2 hours. Are you ready?
Right on schedule, Admiral. Just give us your coordinates and we'll beam you aboard.
All right. I don't like to lose.
And I've actually interviewed people, and I didn't refer to it at the time as the Kobayashi Maru, but I guess I can refer to it now as it, where I give them a problem that I don't expect them to be able to solve. Pretty much, I never say you can't do it, but let's say if, they did it, I would have been really, 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 really impressed. So, it's more to see how they use resources available to them and how they handle being able to do something or not do something. And okay, there we go. One of the things Neil deGrasse Tyson, I heard him say a while ago, really stuck with me. Just the phrase of, we as humans are intelligent because we define ourselves to be intelligent. And that, to me, I won't play this whole discussion because it's a little longer. But I do want to watch the first few minutes of it, which I think really exemplifies that fifth bullet point here to say, the more I learn, now you have to let go of what you were very fond of, which is something, that we discussed and touched on. And I think it fits really well with what Neil deGrasse Tyson says here.
So I lose sleep over this, and I've always wanted to be in the company of a leading biologist to get insight into this. As an astrophysicist, we've seen throughout time the hubris that comes with any discovery that gets made, or the hubris that prevents the acceptance of a discovery that might demote your sense of self from whatever you previously imagined it to be. Among them is, where is Earth? Is it the center of all things? No, it's not even a significant planet in orbit around an ordinary star in the corner of a ordinary galaxy, one of 100 billion galaxies in the universe. And so here we are saying, let's search for life in the universe, intelligent life like us. Well, who are we to say that we're intelligent? I pose that not as a joke question, but it's a very serious question. We define ourselves to be intelligent in ways that no other creature can rival. Okay, now what do we credit that intelligence to? So you look at the genome, and let's take the chimp. I guess that's a really close relative of ours. And we have, high 90s% identical, indistinguishable DNA. And the chimp does not build the Hubble telescope, and the chimp does not compose symphonies. So we must then declare that everything we say about us that is intelligent is found in that 1.5% difference in DNA. Is that a fair statement to make? Okay. Let me invert that question. If the genetic difference between humans and chimps is that small, maybe the difference in our intelligence is also that small. Yeah. Maybe the difference between stacking boxes and reaching a banana, putting up an umbrella when it rains, whatever are these rudimentary things a chimp does that the primatologists roll them forward and boast about, which of course our toddlers can do, maybe the difference between that and the Hubble telescope is as small as that difference in DNA, because I pose the question. Suppose there was another life form on Earth or elsewhere, that in that same sort of vector, that 1.5% difference we are to chimps, suppose they were 1.5% different from us. They would then roll the smartest of us in front of their humatologists and say, Hawking, there's Hawking, oh, this one is slightly smarter than the rest of them because he can do astrophysics calculations in his head. Like little Timmy over here. So I wonder if we're just blithering idiots in the presence of even a trivially smarter species than us. So therefore, who are we to even assert that, number one, we are intelligent and we're looking for others at least as intelligent as us out there to talk to? By the way, is there any other species on Earth that we can talk to?
Okay,
Can we have a conversation with a chimp?
Good random spot to stop, but it's an interesting line of thought, and I think it reflects on those points that I have detailed there on the left. This would be a fun way to close it out, and this is just from Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, and it's just showing to embrace paradox, and this is showing that Bill and Ted, who are traveling back and forth through time, have learned to embrace paradox, as we all should.
Can we get your dad's keys? Could steal them, but he lost them 2 days ago. Only we could go back in time to when he had them and steal them then. Well, why can't we? Because we don't got time. We could do it after the report. Ted, good thinking, dude. After the report, we'll time travel back to 2 days ago, steal your dad's keys, and leave them here. Where? I don't know. How about behind that sign? That way, when we get here now, they'll be waiting for us. See? Whoa, yeah! So, after the report, we can't forget to do this, otherwise it won't happen. But it did happen. Hey, it was me who stole my dad's keys. Exactly, Ted. Come on,